You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Amanda, and I am joined by my two friends, Tyler and Stephanie. We are a trio of coaches coming together to explore life's biggest topics. Each episode, we hold true to our name, Come As You Are, by showing up and going live. Whatever we bring to the table that week is what we talk about. No scripts, no planning, just real and raw conversations. And audience participation is always encouraged. Our mission is to create a space where vulnerability and authenticity take center stage. And we believe in the power of deep conversations and soulful connections. So, welcome to the show. We're happy that you're here, and we invite you now to just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation.
Hello.
Hi, Britt.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Welcome to 2024.
I know.
Oh my gosh, it feels like it's been forever. Like
I
haven't seen you guys since last year.
I know we were like backstage like before we started going live, and we had a lot of energy, and I could tell. I was like, I'm back with like my two besties. Like I feel like I've missed you. I feel like it's been way too long. Like that holiday. I mean, the holidays were fine, but I was like, I really missed like just connecting on Fridays. Like it was. I'm glad to be back live.
Me too. Like, agreed. Holidays were awesome, but my weeks didn't feel the same. There was something missing.
Yep.
Same. And I think we only missed 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it was that long, but
No.
there was so much going on. Holidays are always so busy, and it's like weird schedules. It felt longer than 2 weeks because we went 2 weeks without going live before.
Yep.
I think. But this time it felt
point.
like way longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it was because all the things that were happening, and I think too with the holidays, like everything is so special. I don't know you guys. I'm gonna guess probably it's the same for most people, but like the routine is like what routine? Everything is just completely different. I often find myself, what day is it today? Like
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I had the whole week off, like between Christmas and New Year, I had that whole week off, and which was amazing because I got to like really create and do like some reflection, and y'all, I'm really excited. I got like lots of things in the pipeline for 2024. Like I started to create, and I was like, oh, this is cool. and it was so because, as we were just saying, like there was no schedule. So I was like really in flow, and I would work when I felt inspired, and then I would take a break, and then I'd come back to it. And it was so like this that I was like, I would wake up and I'd be like, what day is it? Oh, it's Tuesday. Oh, okay. Like like time just did not exist during the Christmas break. And I loved it. I loved that I really just got to be like really present and like connected to myself and to others and whatnot. And it was just like, wow, what if life was more like this all the time?
Isn't that such a great example?
Yeah.
I think the holidays can give us that, right? It can give us that peek into, what would it look like if we weren't so, and I'm very attached to my calendar and it keeps me like on schedule. But when it comes to the holidays this year, I really did. I kind of tried to reschedule things. So I had a lot more time to sort of just relax and enjoy and spend time with friends and family. And it was so nice, but sometimes I would find myself, well, what day is it? What time is it? And everything was completely thrown off. And though I think it's beautiful, it's really interesting to see now. I feel like I'm kind of getting more back into this, more typical routine where I'm like, oh, what time is my next session? And I'm looking at my calendar more. I don't know how many times over the break my phone just ran out of battery. And it didn't matter because I didn't need to know, well, let me check my calendar and see what's next. Or, like I just let it go. And oh yes, this is like
I find it very interesting what you're saying here, Amanda, of like, yeah, it was magical to have like the time off, and now that you're getting back into back into your routine, it's also like very like something that we also need, because I'm feeling the same way too. It was like I had all this magical like flow, and it was free time, and just felt very zen. And then it was like okay, but like we really do have to get back to some sort of schedule and some sort of like routine, because we need that balance. And I think it's really important. Like what I realized was I need a little bit more of that balance, which I'm trying to bring into this new year. Is like okay, when do I really like allow myself to just unplug and not have a schedule, and like not have like I got to know exactly where I need to be at every moment, at every time, and and how am I blocking in this project, and how am I getting this done, and where does that fit into the calendar? Like that's crazy, but we need that. But then we also need like the completely unplugged, like, oh, what does it look like to just create? And I think this year I'm dedicating more of my weekends to being just flow, and just like I'm gonna put I really made this like decision actually now, just sitting here. I was like, okay, let's make this decision live. Why not? But Monday through Friday, I think it's nice to have the structure and the routine, because it allows things to happen. But for me, I like last year, I always worked, not even just on Mondays through Fridays, but I was also working Saturdays, and a lot of times I was doing things on Sunday that were like work related. And I'm just gonna allow, I think, the weekend this year to be a bit more flowy.
I was just thinking, this happens to me a lot, where I look on a device like my computer or my phone, not to look at the time, but it's just there, right? It will show you, like, you will look at the time. And I find that so exhausting. I wish that I could set up my phone in a way that it would only tell me the time if I wanted it to. Or same with my computer. It's always in the like right lower corner. I don't know if there's a setting to actually turn this off. I need to look into this. But I find it so exhausting if it's like all the time looking at the time, and like you don't want to know, but it's just there, and your brain does something with it. I don't know. My brain does something with it, and over time it's just exhausting me. So I agree that often when we're a lot in the flow, then we realize, oh, it would be so cool to have a bit more structure again, or a bit more routine. And then we have a lot of routine, and then obviously we're like, oh, actually I'd love to just throw my calendar out for a couple of days and not do that. I think that's human. That's the rhythm of life. For me, this piece looking at the time is something else. I don't know, it's my brain automatically, maybe it's just my brain, you two need to let me know if you're the same way or not. My brain automatically, when I see the time, when I don't want to, or when it doesn't matter, it's unnecessary information. And I don't know, maybe I need to find a boundary there or something. But for me, often it's just like, I don't need to know the time right now. Why are you showing me the time? Just let it go. Is that something you two experience too, or am I a unicorn here?
I think I get into periods of that where I like maybe even a little bit like maybe even sometimes during the work week, because like my work week is very structured. Like I know exactly what I'm doing. I know pretty much exactly when. You know, I've built it to where I have like this nice built-in structure, and so it's like my body kind of knows, you know, what needs to happen when and things like that. And so it's like yeah, do I really need to know that it like right now it's 11:42 Central Time, you know? Like right now, do I really need to know that? But yet it's literally right here, you know, always staring at me. And I think I don't know, time's such an interesting concept, I think, because one, I truly believe time doesn't actually exist. You know, it's definitely something that we've created and structured, and, you know, we've built whole, like our whole lives around time. But when you're truly present, like time just doesn't really doesn't make sense. And like, I mean, we've all had that experience too, where, you know, you're doing something joyful and you're like, oh my God, 7 hours just went by.
Oh yeah.
And
Mhm.
then you're
Mhm.
doing something like extremely like painful or hard, and you're like, oh my God, it's only been 5 minutes. Like that, like
When is this gonna be over?
that was me. That was me this morning at the gym. Like I was doing the rope thing and I was pulling the rope and we were doing it for 5 minutes. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life. It felt like 15. It felt like at least 15 minutes. And I like looked down at the little, you know, the time tracker. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's only been a minute and like 22 seconds. And I was like, this like, you know, so that's why, like, I think for me, I like, I don't know, I just have this weird relationship with time. So I kind of agree with you, Stephanie, with like, it would be nice if like sometimes we just could turn off clocks and like just kind of just be. Because I really do, I have this like weird relationship with clocks too, I guess.
Time really is interesting. It is interesting to think about, and it doesn't bring, I think, to mind, especially as you were sharing, Tyler, this idea of what is the difference when we're doing something that we enjoy and time just suddenly flies by versus those where we're, you know, every 30 seconds we're like, okay, is it over yet? Is it over yet? Like, it's still, you know, the same thing, but they're the same technically amount of time. Like the time is still passing, but why it can feel so, or how it can feel so different, I think is really interesting to consider. And I think for me, as I'm coming back more into routine, it's, yeah, it is more checking the time. And right before, usually I'm, you know, at this point, I'm pretty much more so back into the routine, more or less. And before that, I was like, over the break, having these dreams that I would forget everything and I would like miss every one of my appointments because I'm so like not used to checking the time and, you know, like these things, right? So I don't know. It's really interesting. Tyler
I
can relate.
actually,
I'm sensing.
I
I,
have
I
this thing on a list that I'm
Oh
late to
no.
something. Like that's definitely something that is coming up for me. I don't know. It's just one of my biggest fears.
I've had those dreams too, Amanda. That's why I had such a reaction to it. I
Yeah.
would literally over break. I was having like, oh, I missed this, and oh, and it, you know, we're like, it's like time trauma, you know. It's like, oh, don't be late, don't be, and it's, and I get it to some degree, like, you know, it's a courtesy thing. Like if you've got an appointment and you're late to the appointment, like it's there's like a courtesy thing, but is it that detrimental if we are late? If we do like, you know, if we do run 5 minutes behind, like, is it really that detrimental to the day, to the world? No, you know, but we're so conditioned to believe that we have to be there right at, 10 o'clock. And if we're not, if we're not there right at 10, and I'm like, we put all of this stress on ourselves to, get to places at a certain time. And like, I'm something that I've been allowing myself, like, the space to have is like a 5-minute window, it's like, because I noticed, like, before I would be driving and I'd be driving like a maniac because it was like, oh, I have to get there, I'm going to be late to the appointment. And one, that's dangerous to be driving like a maniac. And two, if I'm 2 minutes late, is it really that bad? That's actually, it's a pretty big question. Like, if you're 2 minutes late, is it the end of the world?
Yeah, not really, right? For most things, it really doesn't matter. It reminds me of, so I no longer go to this doctor, but I had a doctor that you make an appointment and you'd sit there for 3 hours waiting for your appointment. I'm like, what's the point of giving me an appointment? Just tell me to show up on this day and I'll get in at some point. Like, why give me a time? And if I always found it so interesting that if you missed your appointment, you'd get like a missed appointment charge. But if she was late, it didn't matter. Like, she could be as late as she wanted. I'm like, but she's missed my appointment at this point. But what else am I going to do? I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait, right? And so I can see this, but I don't go to that doctor anymore because of that reason. It was just, but this is like hours, right? We're not talking like 2-3 minutes, like 5 minutes, whatever. Hours, and consistently, like always. You knew that if you're going to the doctor, it was a whole day event, right? And just for what, right? So yes, like, I can see how we do really almost like, okay, even for us here, right? If we didn't say, okay, we're meeting at this time, how would we know when to show up, right? But if there is a little bit of delay, we're okay. Like, we actually, like, we're not gonna die. Like, we're okay. But I know that there are some people, I'm not gonna name names, that, they're not 5 minutes, 10 minutes early, and they're like stressing themselves and they're so anxious. And to me, I'm of the belief that, yes, I'm going to be respectful of other people's time. Absolutely. If I say I'm going to be there at a time, I'm going to do my very best to be there at that time. But if life happens and it's going to require that I drive like a maniac to get there on time, I'm going to arrive alive instead of driving like a maniac. I'm going to let you know that, you know what? I'm running a little bit behind. I will be there. But I just don't see the point in stressing about it. Because then when I get there, I'm just going to be so like tense and anxious. And I don't want that. I don't want that energy. So I would rather, take my time and get there when I can. But I know that's not how everybody thinks. And I mean, with, there's so many different belief systems in general about so many things. But I think time is a really big one. And I think it was funny when you were saying time trauma. I think that's a really, it's funny to think about though, actually, right? Like, what does that mean? And how does that show up? Like, I wonder I wonder, but I also have some answers in like, how is that created, right? And I'm sure this is also from, most of the time, from parents and grandparents and people in our lives who are like, oh, we gotta be on time. And then they get all stressed. And then we learn that that's, kind of how it is. But I also think about, I don't know, I just think this is a really interesting connection to all that, in the sense of because my sister, she had her baby, and so it's so exciting, but he came early. And so it just makes me think, right? Like what or if any kind of connection as we think about time, because I have some friends that they were born, like most babies aren't really born on their due date, right? But this one friend born on their due date, and they are the most anxious person about time and being late and like all of these things. So I'm just like, getting curious on like, when does it all start, right? When do we begin to make this relationship with time? And I'm like going, well, here we are. Just a thought, just, a random Friday afternoon thought.
Super casual. I love
casual.
it.
I'm just keeping it casual.
Why not? I think you answered it already. Talking about people being born, there's your answer. That's when the relationship starts. I would say even before that, I think that we also subconsciously experience things in the womb or even before that. That's a really interesting thought. I've never connected those two together. So let me think about this. I was not born on my due date. I was born later, but I am in that category, or I was in that category for a really long time of always being rather 20 minutes early and then waiting than being 5 minutes late, because that meant that the attention would be on me or I could be ridiculed for something that I did wrong. And I absolutely wanted to avoid that. So I did the anxious tour. And how do I say this? I am now a recovering super early comer. I don't know. So I'm trying to get out of this, because like you said before, Amanda, it is so stressful. You're stressing yourself out over almost nothing, and you're in this very anxious state, and that's not helping. That's not healthy. And so now what I try to do is be with the flow and say, you know what, whatever's going to happen is meant to happen. And ever since I started to work on this relationship with being on time or not on time, I also noticed that my relationship with the other people changes. Because we also, when we come to an appointment and the other person is late or the other person is early and we are late, we also attach meaning to that, right? We also attach meaning to, okay, the other person was late. What does that mean? What does it say about me? Maybe as an anxious person, you would think, oh, this person not valuing my time. I'm not that important, or, whatever stuff you can make up for yourself. And so that is also always interesting for me. And in the last few years, I guess we all have attended so many online stuff, right? Like online events and conferences and whatnots. And I'm also thinking now back, there were some that started like a couple of minutes late, and then noticing what people do in the chat during that time, super interesting, right? Is it starting? Is my screen frozen? What's happening? Everyone's like, what? And I gotta say, like with those events where I really have no skin in the game, I'm just like a viewer. I'm like, chill, people. Why? Who cares, right? Maybe they had some tech issues. Maybe someone didn't get their makeup done in time. I don't care, but I could just sit here on my couch and enjoy. And everyone's like, what's happening? And is your screen also not working? that's super. Where's tech support? Yeah, that's really interesting.
That's really funny, actually. I'm thinking about that because I did like an online workshop not too long ago, and it was they went late, or it started late, and everybody panics, and it's like okay, and this is speaking. I'm gonna speak more specifically to like the event. If you sign up for an event and you want to go to the event, you're clearing your calendar to be at that event. And I'm sorry, but if you're really committed to the event, you're going to clear your whole calendar, or, you know, a majority of the calendar for the time that the event's taking place. So it's like if it does start late, you know, and this is why I think it's really important to have breathing room into our schedules. Like, I think it's so important to have gaps of free time. I'm not even gonna say free time. I'm gonna say like breathing time, you know, because I know I used to be somebody who tried to schedule everything out, and I was like, and it was weird. I was looking back on some old journals, and it was literally I was like, okay, and then at 10:15 I'm gonna do this, and then at 10:45 I'm gonna start this, and I was like, wow, this is like a little bit nuts, because I don't know, one, like with like events and things like that, if they do run over, you know, I don't want to just like have to miss it, you know, especially if I'm paying for it, or especially if I'm investing money into it. But I think it's so, I don't know, that's so interesting that we're so anxious about like, oh, it didn't start on time. There was another, I saw Lady Gaga in concert a couple of years ago. Her concert didn't start until like 9:45, but she didn't have any openers. It was nothing, and the ticket said 7:30. And I'll never forget, I went on Twitter, and I was looking, like I searched Lady Gaga just to see all the tweets that were coming in, and it was like 7:30 came around, and people at like 7:35, they were like, "Where's Gaga?" And I'm like, well, first of all, they never go on at 7:30, ever. So like that was like, what is this, your first concert? Like, they don't go on at 7:30. And I was like, okay, maybe she'll start at like 8, because I didn't know. And but it was like progressively, like you could feel the frustration of like, when is this going to start? Why hasn't this started yet? And by the time she got on, people had left. They had left the concert. And I was like, you paid to be here. You paid to get, to be here. And just because they didn't go on at a time that you thought was appropriate, you're just gonna like throw your money away and walk out. I found it so interesting, because she eventually came on, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if that was like a typical thing. It was my first Lady Gaga concert. I don't know, but she came on. It was a magical show. It was amazing. But I was by the end, like when she didn't go on at 9 o'clock, that's when I started to go, okay, where's Gaga? Why isn't she here? Because I was like, okay, well, maybe it's gonna be like 9:15. Oh, maybe it's gonna be 9:20. Maybe it'll be 9:25. And it just progressively, I was like, okay, come on, Gaga, come on, Gaga. But I think everybody does reach, kind of going back to Amanda's point, like with the doctor, you kind of reach that threshold of, I don't want to wait anymore. Like the ticket said 7:30 and it's now 9:45. Where are you? This is ridiculous. Make an announcement, say something, tell us, and that's all that it would have taken from, somebody like the tour manager to walk out on stage and be like, hey, y'all, we're having they could have lied for all we know. I don't know. But if they would have given us any sort of explanation or reason why, like there was such a delay, like everybody would have been fine. But it was that whole like silence of like nobody said anything, and then she just came on, and we were like, well, why did it take so long? But again, it's that like, it's funny because like I didn't have anything else to do that night. I was there to see Gaga. So and what was the big deal of having to wait?
And I wonder too if it would have made a difference for some people, maybe some, but if they had made an announcement. However, I think you probably still would have had those. I mean, this is a pure assumption, but because that wouldn't have been me, I would have waited. But I'm extremely patient, like extremely patient. So I would have waited. But I wonder, right, how many people that would have made a difference for, or when like you do show up late and it's the, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late, I'm so sorry I'm late, I'm so sorry I'm late, And so many places and spaces I've heard like, don't ever apologize for being late. It should be more of like a thank you for waiting for me. Like, thank you for your patience, as opposed to, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And so I wonder, like, if her addressing it, or if her saying something, or the tour man, like anyone saying something about it, if that would have changed people's mind. Who knows, right? Like, I don't know. I think probably for some it might have, but I still think you would get, again, a pure assumption, that you would get those who are like, no, I'm not waiting, like, forget this, right? But also, I think sometimes we forget that, and especially in this example of like, celebrity status, like, they're people too. Like, maybe she had a really rough day, or maybe her flight was delayed, or maybe, who knows, her kids were, I don't even know if she has kids, but yeah.
So you said that maybe the flight was delayed. This actually happened like last year at ACL. Kendrick Lamar, his flight apparently was delayed,
Right.
and he didn't show up for he didn't make it. He was a headliner at ACL. He didn't make it until he was like supposed to go on at 9, and he didn't go on until like 10, and then he was supposed to be over at like 10:30. He had like an hour and a half set. I don't know what was happening. He didn't make, like, the plane didn't get there in time. And my first thought, and this is again maybe something I need to be mindful of in this year, in this upcoming year, but my first thought was, why didn't you fly in the night before? You're getting paid to perform, and you have a job to do, and you couldn't fly in the night before. Like, that was where my immediate thought went. And everybody around us, they were like, yeah, why not, and I was like,
but who knows, right? Like,
but
maybe
who
there was
knows?
another show the
Exactly.
night before, or maybe
It's
there
the
weren't any
assumption.
flights. Like,
Yep.
there's always,
Yep.
like, reasons for
Yep.
things. And I
Yep.
think sometimes, like, even to be upset at someone for being late, it's like, well, then why didn't you leave earlier, right? Why didn't you leave yourself more time to get there? And sometimes there's just unexpected things in life that happen. And more so, I believe this to be relatable, especially in the parenting world, because with kids, like, I mean, I can predict my schedule a little bit more than I can predict what my kids are going to do, right? Like, if my kid decides that he doesn't want to leave the house and I need to be somewhere, although I shouldn't be using him as an example because he's really understanding. Like, when you tell him you got to go and you got to be somewhere at a certain time, he's good to go. But, like, there have been times where it's, no, I'm refusing to leave. I'm busy in what I'm doing. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I don't want to leave to go to the dentist. Like, I get that. Like, I totally get that. But it doesn't change that we need to leave, right? But it does make it more challenging, because it's not just now my schedule and how I'm feeling and what I had planned for that day. It's a little person and what they think that they want to do. And I mean, I think something that I always really appreciate about kids is how they can be so set in their ways, or that they just know what they want. Though this can be challenging on the parenting end, but as a child, I just think that's something to really appreciate, because we kind of lose that as we get older, And I think there's so much that we actually can learn from kids, especially in this conversation of time, because they have no concept whatsoever. Like, they're not constantly checking the time or looking at their phone to see what time is it now. They couldn't care less. They really don't care. So I wonder how we could, like, I almost feel like tap into that, like, little little child in us, that childlike feeling of who cares what time it is? Does it matter? I mean, we're not going to start showing up like 2 and 3 hours late, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think that this has so much to do with our society, how we are set up altogether, that we are so dependent on the calendar and on the clock. Can you imagine running, I don't know, a doctor's practice, for example, or a coaching practice, or a supermarket, I don't know, without a clock? Like, tell your employees, hey, please show up at dawn.
Show up whenever you want.
or I don't know, tell your client, look, when you wake up in the morning, take your time, and then just come over, right? And we're gonna have a session. And I was thinking about this when we started this topic today, of back in the day, there had been doctors back in the day, right? There was this one person in the town, and everyone went to the doctor whenever they had anything that was hurting. They went to the doctor, and they didn't first call to make an appointment. There were no telephones. There was nothing. So they just, okay, something hurts, I'm going to go to the doctor. Or back in the day, there weren't coaches, but there were maybe shamans or town elderlies who had wise words for everyone who needed them, some encouragement. Or maybe you would go to the church or whatever. And again, no appointments. People would just show up whenever they had something on their mind. And can you imagine these days doing it like this? This would, like, I feel like this is anarchy to do it like that, to not have a schedule at all. And I think people wouldn't want to sign up for this. Like you said before, Amanda, you don't want to sit around 3 hours at the doctor's office when you can also go to another doctor that can give you an appointment. And maybe you're not going to get, like, maybe the doctor calls you in 20 minutes later, but not 3 hours later. So why would you go to the doctor that calls you in 3 hours later, right? So I'm thinking it's not really timely, ironically, not really timely anymore to do it like this. But I think there's a little bit of magic in doing it like that. Like it seems a bit, you can go more with the flow. You can let go of this structure. And like you said before, Tyler, it's good sometimes to have structure. Sometimes we need it. But do we really need, that's my question, do we really need a clock to have structure? It's a very man-made, human-made concept, right?
Yeah. I think one thing that I want to add here quickly is because of the time that we're in. Like, and I was thinking about this a lot because of New Year's. And I'm surprised we haven't got here yet, because everyone's staring at the time. We're counting down the seconds. And I just think that's so interesting, right? To think about that, like, that is, I think, when the whole world actually is the most focused on time. And I just find that so interesting because we're all in different time zones. And so your New Year is different than mine. So yeah, but as we talk about time, I just think that's kind of ironic that we're like in the new year when this is when that 12 a.m. I want to say that's probably, and I could be wrong, but I think it would be fair to say that that is when the whole world is paying attention to the time the most out of any other time of the year.
So I have some thoughts.
Please share with us.
I love Stephanie's question about bringing more of that magic into time. It's something that I've really been fascinated with here recently. And it's something that I've been testing out with my private clients that I'm working with, where I book them for an allotted time, but if we go over, I'm okay with that. Because I think sometimes, like, and this is one of the things that I'm like, as I roll out some new projects in 2024, for my one-to-one clients, the ones that really want to work with me, I want to be open, very similar to what Stephanie was saying about, like, the doctor, you just kind of show up, or, the shaman, you just kind of show up, you just walk into the church and go talk to a priest. Like I want to have a little bit more of that openness available to my one-to-one clients that want to work with me in that capacity, because sometimes we get into a middle of a session, especially if we're strategizing or if we're creating or coming up with ideas, like whatever, brainstorming, whatever we're doing. Sometimes you get to the 45-minute mark or the hour mark, and you're like, wait, do you have like 10 more minutes? Let's finish up our thoughts. Because imagine, like, to me, that's the magic of it. It's like if you were to cut them off right at the 60-minute mark, you might miss some of the magic. You might miss some of that. Like, they might have a breakthrough at 61 minutes, but now you've cut them off because it's like, okay, I gotta go. The hour's up. See ya.
Time's up. That's it.
Time's
Yeah.
up. Get out. See ya.
That's your
But,
1
like,
hour and your 1 hour only.
but like I've been doing that recently, because right now I've taken on, like, I've just got 2 private clients that I'm currently working with outside of my full-time job. And so it's been flexible enough for me to do this. And I really like it. And as I was thinking about, like, okay, how do I want to structure my schedule and my thing? It's like, please book a call, put it on the calendar. And that was another thing, was like, I like when it comes up on the calendar, because I can see, oh, I've got to call, I've got to call my client at this time, or we're going to connect at this time. But, if we, for whatever reason, go 5 minutes over, I'm open to that flexibility of the flow. And it makes me feel so much more aligned and, like, attuned to like the energy of the world. And I know that sounds really woo woo, but, like, it doesn't feel so restrictive. It doesn't feel so like, gotta polish it up in the next 5 minutes and da, 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 da. And I'm like, it allows me to just create more and kind of, like, use my magic. And I don't know. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be exploring this in the new year, is that kind of flexibility of time, and being like, okay, yeah, we're going to meet, we're scheduled for an hour, but if we go an hour and 15 minutes, is that going to end my world? No. If I've got the time and you've got the time, why not? Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
I think because we're off. Going to this idea of being conditioned to be so rigid and so restricted, right? Like, you've got 1 hour and that's it. It's, not a second more. And also, too, I'm thinking back to even coach trainings, right? Like, so much of that was actually teaching, okay, so this part of the session is 2 minutes, then this part of the session is 5 minutes. And I remember when we were first in one of the programs that I was in, and they were first teaching us this, like, structure of a session or whatever. And it was, the sessions it was a little bit more, like, loose in the flexibility on time and how long the session should be. But so many people were like, but how long? How long should the session be? And how much time should I be spending in each, like, different section of the coaching? so many people were, yeah, they were, and I was thinking, I mean, when I get into a coaching session, I'm mindful of the time. I mean, if our sessions are, 45 minutes, we're not going to have a 3-hour session. But it's not like, oh, okay, time's up for this part. Let's move on to the next scene. If there's still, something there that feels like is important. And I think the being present is more important than, oh, okay, we got 30 seconds. Hurry up. Let's wrap this up.
I remember, I just have to like share this thought. I remember going through like coach training and having the schedule. And I remember anytime I would do like a skills lab with another coach or something like that, the most cringy part of the session was when, like I was being like I was the client and they were coaching me, and they would be like, okay, we got to go to the next section. And I'm like, ooh, okay, well, I'll just hold that in. Never mind, not important, But again, it was like, because we're so conditioned to think, oh, well, this says 2 minutes, so I got to wrap this up in 2 minutes. And it's like, okay, but if it goes 3 minutes, is that the end of the world? No, because you'll make up time somewhere else in the session. Like the next section might not take 10 minutes. It might take 8.
And if that section needed more time, there's a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't need to rush an agenda. And I think that goes far beyond. I mean, I think that actually like is summing up our entire conversation, actually, right? That we can just allow things to unfold as they should, and allow for things to just happen, and trust the process, trust in that divine timing of it all. I often think that's why we're sort of rushing things or pushing things in more a general sense of life, right? It's like, oh, well, by, 30, I should have this and this and this and that accomplished. Doesn't always go that way. And who says that's what should be, right? So, yeah, I think in allowing more of that flow, there is a certain level of having faith and trust in the process, in just the journey of life, that can be a little challenging sometimes, or that can like bring up some things that can trigger us. But there's so much value in doing that and allowing ourselves truly to just be, and just be present in every moment. That's my final thought for the day.
For me, this question just comes up like, yeah, what if we let go of all the scheduling, all the planning, all the timing? The world's not going to end, right? I think there's a lot of gifts probably that we would find there. And too often we're just too afraid to go there. I'm also sitting here now and thinking for myself, yeah, what if this is not a dream to live without a clock as a coach? Like what can I find if I did that, And I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to make this happen, and I don't have to. The only way to get there is to just do it, right? To just let it go and see. So that's the question that I'm taking away from here today. It's like, what if I let this all go? What if I threw out the calendar? What's the best thing that could happen? Kind of. I'm gonna take this with me today.
Sounds like a great journal session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the first word that popped up in my mind was freedom. It's that idea of freedom. And my final thought here is everybody is always like looking for time freedom, and they think, oh, I'll have time freedom like when I make more money or when I get a different job or da 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 da. You can have time freedom now. That's my final thought, is like, what does it look like if you allowed yourself to have time freedom now? Chew on that. Well, this has been fun. Happy 2024 to everyone. I think it was appropriate that we did a whole session on time. So I'm inviting everyone who's listening or who's watching the replay, allow yourself to spend a little less time in 2024 thinking about time.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversation going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.